Hey there. We have a story about, you've heard a lot lately about the DEA not taking marijuana off of the Schedule 1 designation. Um, well, what would happen if they did? Would they take it to Schedule 2 or would they take it to Schedule 3 where it's still like a place where you probably don't want to be with marijuana, but Schedule 2 probably it would be a disaster. And sorry if the lighting's bad. I'm going to adjust it. But anyhow, we have an article here from The Motley Fool by Sean Williams. Hillary Clinton pledged to reschedule marijuana if elected could backfire. So in less than 3 months' time, tens of millions of American voters will head to the polls and decide who will become the 45th President of the United States. Who their selection will be remains a mystery. Marijuana is breaking barriers this election cycle. So, sorry, that was another headline thrown in. This article is divided up into a couple different headlines, and that was one of them. So, whoever the candidates aren't really the reason why people are going to the polls in November. As we might have mentioned earlier, we have states legalizing marijuana. There's some medical marijuana things that are on issues. So, there's a lot of people that's going to be going to vote just because they're voting for the marijuana. I've said that for a long time, about 2016, before 2016 even started. Anyhow, Gallup's 2015 national poll had 58% of respondents supporting the national legalization of marijuana efforts, up from about 33% just a decade ago. A similar poll conducted by CBS News showed that 84% of America favored the legalization of cannabis for medical purposes. Americans as a whole are eager to see Capitol Hill change its stance on marijuana. Capitol Hill, however, isn't as excited. In fact, earlier this month, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency released a report detailing why it would not change marijuana from Schedule 1. Schedule 1 drugs are deemed to have no medical benefits and are thus illegal. In this report, the DEA cited potential for abuse and the still unknown properties and risks of marijuana as its reasoning for not changing marijuana's long-standing Schedule 1 classification. The next part says Clinton throws her support behind rescheduling cannabis. Okay, so if Clinton is elected president, she charges, from everything she's indicated, which I doubt she's really all that, it's not something she's going to get right on. It's not a big priority of hers from the look of it, but from the statements from her campaign and the way that her people kind of hammered out the platform of the Democratic Party with rescheduling instead of taking marijuana off a schedule altogether, which is what everybody else wanted. Basically, the Bernie-crats, if you will. So, being on the side of scheduling it down to Schedule 2 has been kind of Hillary's stance. But now will she do this right away when she gets in there and just, do whatever it takes to get it on Schedule 2 with her corruption, maybe tell her friends over at the DEA to just bump it down to 2 so her other friends over at the FDA can start working the system. Who knows? But anyway, that's her, and by all indications, that's what she wants to do. This isn't nothing like what her views 8 years ago. I don't remember specifically what her views were 8 years ago, but it didn't sound like anything like she was going to do anything for marijuana. More research needs to be done, she said. I'm in favor of the efforts to look at it more. She's always been on the side of research. So, don't forget that rescheduling cannabis to 2 would immediately allow doctors across the country to prescribe the drug for approved ailments. I'm guessing it would be like the CBD medicine and the stuff for kids that have seizures, maybe something in the way of, just prescribing people marijuana for pain at whatever. I don't know. I'm pretty sure the pharmaceutical industry doesn't really want to get involved until, like you're about to find out, there's a little bit more to it than just telling the pharmacies, oh hey, you can prescribe people marijuana now, go ahead. And then they're just going to start writing prescriptions for joints. That doesn't work like that when you're in a Schedule 2 or Schedule 3 environment. So the article goes on to say that the irony is that Clinton's push to reschedule cannabis could actually wind up backfiring on the industry, and not just the medical marijuana industry as a whole. But as usual, when things impact industries, the people that are the smallest are the ones that are going to get affected the most. For as long as I can recall, now this is the article again, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, and other nonprofit organizations have been pushing for lawmakers to remove marijuana Schedule 1 status, effectively legalizing and decriminalizing the drug at the federal level. If Clinton has her way, NORML and its peers would go that first step towards possible full legalization. However, the move to Schedule 2 could come at a mighty cost to the cannabis industry. Current therapies that bear Schedule 2 designation include OxyContin, Percocet, and morphine, to name a few. While these narcotics can be prescribed by a physician for pain management, they are also tightly regulated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The FDA is the regulatory body responsible for establishing medicinal efficacy, approving medicines, regulating the manufacturing process of drugs, and overseeing the accuracy of the marketing and packaging labeling of therapeutics. Moving to marijuana to a Schedule 2 classification would, in effect, move medical marijuana into the pharmaceutical business and place the industry under the tight and costly rules and regulations of the FDA. For example, the FDA could require all packaging and labeling be run by it prior to retail sale in medical marijuana shops. Perhaps that's not so bad, but it could certainly slow down the process through which medical marijuana makes it to storefronts. Secondly, the FDA could tightly regulate the manufacturing process of medical marijuana grow farms. This could include ensuring that THC content from one grow to the next remains consistent and within certain guidelines. If growers aren't abiding by strict guidelines laid out by the FDA, then they could be subject to fines and their crops may not make it to the medical market dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries. Well, I'm a person that does organic farming, so I think I would qualify. Basically, there's got to be some kind of way to tell people, hey man, that's not medical marijuana. Whatever you're doing there, you're growing something, but it's not medical marijuana. And sometimes it's just garbage. So let's regulate ourselves before they come in and do it for us. But if they bump this down to Schedule 2 instead of, I think, take it right off the scheduling altogether, get it out of the CSA because it's safe. We'll find out more about that in a different story. But maybe, if we regulated ourselves, them questions wouldn't be out there as much. So, yes. All right, so the article goes on. Yet the most damaging aspect of the Schedule 2 designation could be the possibility of clinical trials. You might have heard of these. The FDA is under no obligation to take the cannabis industry at its word that marijuana has a medically beneficial effect on epilepsy or pain, as an example. Even though they've seen the Dr. Sanjay weed documentaries, and they've seen other stories about people that maybe have seizures right on film while they're eating the cannabis, and boom, the seizures are gone. To them, that's just whatever, could be they don't care. To them, they got to be the ones to study it. And I believe them trials are long, but yes, it says right here that they take a long time. The FDA is no under obligation to believe you. Instead, the FDA could require that medical marijuana growers, processors, and retailers prove that medical marijuana can meet these primary endpoints in a traditionally run and supervised clinical trial. Clinical trials can take a long time and they can be extremely costly. Filing for drug approval alone is a significant added cost. FDA regulation over the marijuana industry could be a nightmare. No, it would be a nightmare. Smaller marijuana players that can't afford the added regulatory costs could go out of business, while bigger businesses that can absorb those costs would take over. In theory, a rescheduling could give investors more legitimate ways to take part in marijuana's growth story, but it could also inhibit competition and thereby raise the price of medical marijuana for consumers. At the end of the day, liberating marijuana from its Schedule 1 status could do more harm than good unless you took it off altogether. There's another story from Time magazine that I will be covering a little bit of that basically argues for against the Schedule 1 designation. I don't think they go so far as to actually call it out of schedule altogether. Like, we just need to get this out of schedule altogether. But when you listen to what the scientists have to say, it sounds like they're saying we can study this without the FDA. We can do this without them kind of clinical trials. We're doing these clinical trials. We can continue to do them. Overall, Hillary Clinton would be a disaster, because I do believe she would, although this might not be something she gets right out of the bat, right when she gets in the Oval Office. She would be a disaster because she would do this. And I mean, the reason the DEA said no to schedule elimination or rescheduling was because that their people aren't in line yet. Their people aren't lined up and ready to take the bull by the horns, as you might say, and get on this green rush, as everybody calls it in the mainstream media. They want to make everybody think that, oh yeah, well, of course, medical marijuana and recreational marijuana are multi-million-dollar industries, multi-billion-dollar industries. We've known that for decades. Before we had the Mexican drug cartels racking up all the money from it. And basically, they're trying to get the market. They're trying to get all the market share and give it to their friends. If you don't believe me, look what happened to Maryland's medical marijuana. Not a single African-American entrepreneur or any kind of business person was given one of those coveted licenses in Maryland. Then you can look at other marijuana programs in the country and whether they're legitimate or not, or like Washington, where the liquor board runs the marijuana, and they basically ran medical marijuana right out of business. So, Hillary disaster, Schedule 2 disaster, Controlled Substances Act altogether disaster. Maybe we should make the DEA and the FDA prove that it shouldn't be on the Controlled Substances Act, because quite frankly, you couldn't control it when it was. I mean, literally, you had no control over marijuana grown by individuals. You had no control over marijuana being smuggled in from other countries. You had no control of regulating whether marijuana was safe to use, because someone could have put impurities in it, or it could have been, something like a fabric softener in there to cover up the smell while they smuggled it, or whatever. I mean, when marijuana is illegal, it's dangerous because for many reasons it's in the black market. It's being sold right next to more dangerous drugs, and there's people that, the stakes are high if you get ripped off from blah blah blah, black market. Now there's like I said, there's a bunch of people that want to make their money. They want to get in the marijuana business because it's just a big booming new business, and to them that's where they want to make their money. So Hillary Clinton would be a disaster for marijuana because of that reason. She's going to give it away to all her friends. Even people like me are probably going to be in question. It's probably threatening. All right, who knows? We'll see how this pans out.